paintings. That gave me so much association with him. So when I was looking at the print, I didn't want to step on his mat because it was just above his head. So I was kind of reaching and leaning and jumping up and down. So he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to see this picture, but I don't want to step on your bed." So he said, "Oh, in Krishna's service, you can step on my head." Then another time, he had written me some letters because I did a bogus painting of Narada Muni with muscles. And he had written me that Narada Muni is a first-class brahmachari, you've painted him like a meat eater. And then I wrote back to him just a very short letter apologizing, and then he wrote back to me that this is the first time I received such a short letter from you in only 3 lines. The thing is, there's a story that a Brahmin was far away from home and he was very hungry and he couldn't find any Hindu's house. So he went to anybody's house, a Muslim's house, and he took some food there, but he was still hungry. And the Muslim said, "I'm sorry, I don't have any more for you." So then he left and he lamented that now I've lost my caste for eating at a non-Hindu's house, and still I'm hungry, I've lost both ways. So Prabhupada said, my point is here, that because I was trying to imitate the old masters, the way that they paint, thinking that they're so famous and they get so many viewers, if I would paint like them, then many people would come to see Krishna's paintings. But I did it all wrong and Prabhupada didn't like it. So then, when I saw him after that in New York, so he wrote in the letter that on one hand, it will take you a long time to become a famous painter like the old masters, and at the same time you'll lose out on your Krishna consciousness. So with whatever talent you have, just engage in Krishna consciousness, which was the instruction he had given us from the beginning, because we artists were lamenting that we could never make anything nice enough to, first of all, decorate Prabhupada's temples, and secondly, decorate his most important books in the universe. So he wrote back, don't bother learning anything, just engage now in the service. And he gave an example that one man had a neighbor who was from another country and couldn't speak his language. So one day his house was on fire, and the man who was his neighbor saw that, and he wanted to express that your house is on fire, but he couldn't express himself because he had another language. But somehow or other, by sign language or pointing or jumping up and down, somehow or other he expressed himself. So Prabhupada wrote us that you don't have any talent now, okay, no problem. But just engage that, just as you don't know the language. But somehow or other, just engage whatever talent you have. Now that it's a very emergency situation, the whole Western world and Eastern world are going to hell. So whatever talent you have, just engage that in Krishna's service, and in that way more talent will come. So he confirmed that in that letter about the Brahmin who ate at the wrong house. And now that when I met him again in New York, he continued with the next sentence, as though we had never separated for any time. He said, nobody cares about how good something is. Just if somebody's famous, then they'll like it. Like they say, oh, so-and-so painted that, oh, then it's very good. So I said, well, we do that too, Prabhupada. We say, oh, Prabhupada said that? Then, oh, that's very good. So he said, that is love. That is a different thing. Just like a mother has a baby who's blind, but out of love, she calls the child, she names the child Padma Locha, or lotus-eyed. So he was expressing great humility. And then we were sitting very close to each other across his desk, like this, the elbow leaning on the desk. But of course, in those days, his desk was not a regular desk, but it was a tin, what do you call it? those tin trunks, the small tin trunks that you get in India. So we were sitting like that as he was speaking, and then he said, when he was talking about the Padmalocha, so he said, "You have cat's eyes. I like cat's eyes." So I said, "I like your eyes, lotus eyes." So then he said, he leaned back and practically fell over, and he said, "Oh, I'm an old fool." So another example of his humility.
From listening to all these Vaishnavas is how Srila Prabhupada always had the order on his head from his Gurudev, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, that this Krishna consciousness would be taken to the West, and that it would be taken to the West by him. Their Guru ordered that anyone and all of them should go, but Prabhupada always knew that he would go. He didn't know how he would go, and he didn't know when he would be able to go, but he knew that he would have to go. And so many of the different entries that we've heard from the Vaishnavas tell very beautiful, magnificently deep memories about how Srila Prabhupada's internal life was guiding him and what kind of connection he was having with his Gurudev and with the 6 Goswamis and with Sri Vrindavan. He said, I had tried originally, when I was planning how to go to America, I had tried to see if I could even get some young aristocratic Vaishnav young boys to come with me, to help me, anybody to come to help me. He said, so I went to the different families and to some of the Gaudiyas and asked, would you give me your son to be my assistant? And Prabhupada said, because their culture was so strong, there was so much strong family and strong community, even within the math, that everyone said, oh no, we couldn't do that. But then Srila Prabhupada said, so when I went immediately to America, then I could see that it was Krishna's arrangement, because your country's best quality young men and women, they had abandoned their high-class families and they were wandering in the street looking for God. And so that was my good fortune and your good fortune. And so I'll tell one very beautiful memory that shows how this wasn't just by accident, that Srila Prabhupada already knew that this was going to happen. That he told this to several devotees who then told us. So I try to take the accounts that we get, and they're all basically the same, with just a little extra information, so we made it into one information. That when he was living in Radha-damodar, just before he came, he was praying so deeply and chanting all night and writing the books and just meditating how he was going to be able to come to America and performing parikramas. And every day at Vraja-mandala he would perform parikrama of the whole mandir, and especially when he got to his Gurudev's Pushpa Samadhi, every day he would put a flower there. He would offer a flower. And so one night, in the middle of the night, he was chanting. And it was a full moon night, and he was, in Srila Prabhupada's little room, how there's that kind of hole that looks out into the courtyard. It's got some kind of broken bricks in it. So he was looking out like that, and then he heard this voice. And the voice said, Avai Charan Aravinda, Avai Charan Aravinda. He thought, who is calling me? And who is calling me by that name? Because that's my grihastha name, it's not my sannyasi name. But then again, so he continued to chant, and then he heard that voice calling again, strongly. So he went out from his room and he went into the courtyard. And he saw like the moon was kind of shining by the samadhi of his Gurudev. So he walked through the archway and went into the samadhi area. And he went up to his Gurudev's samadhi and he paid obeisances there. And just before he sat up, he saw that the flower that he had offered early in the morning was there, but it was beautiful. It was fully blossomed and brilliant, and the moon was shining on it so deeply. And then he looked up and he had darshan of his Gurudev. He told that my Gurudev was there at the Samadhi. And so he paid his dandavats again, and then when he sat up, his Gurudev said, "Oh, so why are you still here? I have ordered you to go, so why are you still here?" And then he said, "Why?" He said, "That's why I am calling you." And he said, "Well, why are you calling me Abhay Charnaravinda?" And his Gurudev said, "I have given you that name because I know that you are the one I gave you that name because you are taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, which take away all fear. So you don't have to be afraid. Don't you know that it's already all been arranged for you to go to the West?" And Srila Prabhupada said, "But how? How can I go? I don't have facility yet. It's not been manifested yet how I can arrange to go." And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada said, "It has already been arranged. Because don't you know that across the ocean there are so many of them there, and they are calling for you, and they are crying for you. So you must immediately go." So he did immediately go. Then Srila Prabhupada went to Delhi, and that's where he met someone who gave him that connection to go to Bombay, and he went. So it was all destined like that, and I wanted to say some things about how Srila Prabhupada, because he saw us as devotees, because he knew that this was his mission, and he always had his Gurudev with him at every second, guiding him, that even though there was tremendous trials like that we couldn't even imagine that he faced, and the biggest trial was associating with us. And he did it with so much love and so much joy and so much potency and magnificence that, I mean, we all can tell stories for hours and hours and hours about that. But I heard one very beautiful thing, and I'll share this too, is the thing that I noticed in the way that Srila Prabhupada always dealt with me is no matter how much of a fool I was and how much I put salt in the Charnamrita and made so many mistakes, and how even though we tried so hard to distribute Prabhupada's books and practically annihilated the good publicity of the whole Western world, he was still like so much encouraging us and only seeing the good, and giving us so much love, just love and love and love, even with the chastisement, so much love. And didn't see, only saw the future. I think he only saw that, we were, he even said at one point, "I think that in your past lives, you were Vaishnavas, but perhaps you had some problem. And therefore you got burned in these Western countries in order to save your countrymen. So that it was Krishna's plan, it was Krishna's arrangement." So one time when Srila Prabhupada came back, I think it was in 1969, he had a few devotees with him. It was still very rare for the Brijvasis to see any Western or white Vaishnavas. And they were all quite ambivalent in some ways about what kind of effect we would have on them and the world. And so he brought a crew of the devotees. This was in one of the Radharaman Goswami's place at the Chaitanya temple there. And he brought a few of the devotees, and they had a little program, and I think the devotees were making some etiquette errors, as usual. And so in Hindi, some of the Goswami people raised their hand and asked Srila Prabhupada, "Well, it's very wonderful what you're doing, and we know this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission and his prediction, but we're very worried that maybe those Western devotees that you're training, because they don't have sadhachar and things like that, they may make some problems for Vaishnavism in Vrindavan. And Prabhupada, like a lion, he immediately began chastising that Goswami and saying, "You don't say anything like that about my children, my students. Don't say anything like that. They are Mahaprabhu's children. They are sent by Mahaprabhu. This is part of his plan. If you say things like that, it's so bad that I will not come back to Vrindavan." So everybody was very quiet. They all just sat up straight and immediately were looking at the Westerners with a different vision. And then Srila Prabhupada starts saying all these glorious things about us. And in their home, outside the temple, outside the mandir area, he spoke to them and he said, "I know what you say and I know your concerns, but these are young, they're young and they're very sincere, and this is Krishna's arrangement. So if you have something to say about them, then you say it to me, but don't say anything to them, because that will discourage them so much and they'll lose heart, because I'm only giving them their heart." So I think that that's pretty much of a synopsis of Srila Prabhupada's relationship with us, is that he gave us our heart, he gave us our inspiration, and he still is, and he always saw the future that someday, maybe not in this life, but in some lives, even though we had some bad births and we had so much karma, and still so many of us are struggling, that there was great hope for the future. Like Srila Gurudev said, there's rays of hope everywhere. And so we're experiencing that still, and in fact it's growing and growing every day.